Kimono Memories is a game published by Emperor S4, and it has a similar art, similar theme as Anamikoji, which is one of my favorite games, one of the few games that survived my massive donation of more than 5,000 games to the Little Library last year. And so when I knew that there was another game that seemed to have something to do with Anamikoji, I definitely wanted to try it. This is a competitive two-player game in which we will be walking the streets of old Kyoto and taking pictures of nice sights and also and especially of kimonos, so women in a kimono. You have your trusted player aids, you have cards that you will shuffle to form the deck. And after you shuffle it, nice and good, there you go. After you shuffle them nice and good, you will place one on each side of the board, creating a track around which you will be moving, or better, this lady with the camera will be moving, but that's okay because she collects cards for you, so that's all good. In the middle of the board we have these tracks with values between 3 and 7. The general idea is that during the game you will acquire cards with these symbols, with symbols corresponding to those tracks, and when you acquire it you pull the token of the corresponding track by one space in your direction. At the end of the game, having those tokens on your side rather than the other side is good for you. You also have one such card. Each player has one at the beginning of the game. Now, these cards are double-sided. One for the basic game and one for the advanced game. I'll tell about the advanced game because I tried both and I like the advanced game so much more than, to me, in a sense, this is the game. And the basic game is very simple. I'm sure you can read the rules online. I found a little too simple and basic for me. So I will have this card in front of me and my opponent will have the card in front of themselves somewhere else. Also, again, we have the deck of cards that we haven't assigned, and we draw 2 and set them aside for now. There will be reward cards used at the end, toward the end of the game, during the special bonus phase, which is one of the differences between the regular and the advanced game. You don't have a special phase at the end of the game to assign reward cards. When it is your turn, you will move this token by 1 or 2 or 3 spaces clockwise, and you will collect the last card then that the photographer here has moved across. So if I move here, I collect this one. If she did 2 jumps, I collect this card. For 3 jumps, this card here. As simple as that. Reminds me a little bit of Patchwork that has a similar mechanic, and I like Patchwork very much. Now, suppose I just did that. I will collect that card and then we replenish that spot with a card from the deck. And then I need to add that to my personal tableau. At the beginning I will add it here because that's all I got. Now, some connections are wild, and those are the wild connections. That means they match whatever card you place next to them. For example, I just completed a cat, because a cat in a wild counts as a cat, and I will place a cat marker like so. Later, I may add cards that may or may not match the symbol. For example, that one, I place a 3 and a 7 next to them. To each other. Not ideal, but totally allowed. And suppose that later I do find oh, look at that. I was able to collect a card that matches that symbol, and so I place a token. There's a reminder that this card for me was worth both a 6 and a 4. Remember, I'm talking about those tracks in the middle of the board where you will move your tokens in your direction toward you that way. I don't have to attach cards only next to each other. I can also start building it like a pyramid. For example, I can attach a card that's, I guess, at the second level, as long as I put it on top of two other cards covering two of the corners. So for example, I'm allowed to place the card there covering the top left corner and the top right corner of the card there. And then maybe later I will place another card up there. Maybe later I place this card there, like so. And then maybe later I place this card here. Oh, look at that. Boom. I completed a 5 there. So that gives me another step on that track in my direction, plus the 4 that I got. And I also complete another cat here. So your tableau will start looking like a pyramid at some point. Oh, look at me. And now I got a 7 there because that's because I put a while there. So it may look kind of like this. Now, we continue this way until there are only 2 cards left. There are no cards left in the deck and only 2 cards left around the board, like so. When that is the case, we can put the board kind of aside, but remember the board will maybe look like this, with these tokens now be facing closer to one player than the other. We take the remaining cards and we put them aside in a line, and those are bonuses. We start looking at track number 3. Whoever has it, and that would be me in that case, can collect a bonus card and add it to their tableau immediately. And suppose I decide to add this one. Now what you add immediately is added to the board. I mean, it immediately affects the board. So for example, if I add this card to my tableau as a reward, I pull that 7 there, and that may help me. Then we check yellow, no one has it because it's right in the middle, and then blue 5, my opponent has it, and so maybe then they decide to take this card, and then we check, I get the 6, and then my opponent gets the one for the 7. And so these last reward cards are issued by the players who have that, who have majority there. Then it's finally time to score final points to reach our final score. You will score points for the track where you have majority, and the number of points is that number of points. 3 points and 6 points for me for the tracks, and 5 and 7, 12 for my opponent. Then we add cat tokens. The number of cat tokens I collected squared is my score for cats. I got 2, so that's 4. If I had 3, it'd be 9, 4, 16, and so on and so forth. Prop cards will, like the umbrella or the lantern, they have victory points, and you score those victory points there. Then these symbols here, they're called the Mon symbols, the ones in the corners of the cards. And some cards will have 1, some cards 2 maybe, but they'll have them in different positions also. Each symbol that is still visible after I build my pyramid is worth points. Mon symbol, they're called Mon symbols. Mon symbols in the bottom layer are worth a point each, second layer 2 points each, third layer 3 points each, so there'll be 6 points. Pretty neat. So if I'm gonna put a card on top of that one, it better be a really good one because it's covering 6 points. However, if that layer had been like this, then I could add another card giving me a 4-point Mon symbol without losing those. So there's definitely strategy based on that, on where you place the Mon symbols and how you build your pyramid, taking that and a lot of other considerations into account. Highest score at the end of the scoring phase wins the game, of course, and this is how you play Kimono Memories. Kimono Memories is very nice. It is very simple. The basic game is even simpler. It's basically still the same idea of going around the board, collecting cards from your tableau, but it's basically, scoring is basically meant on how much you pull those tokens toward you. But I really like the added detail of the other things that you're scoring, and most importantly, I would say the reward cards that you have at the end. It's almost like a very quick mini game, but it's not immaterial at all. It adds something quite interesting. You may even get to the point of trying, toward the end of the game, to leave certain cards in the reward pool rather than others on top of adding certain cards there. And more than anything, it reminded me, again, not so much of an Amikoji other than for the theme and the art, but it really reminded me of Patchwork, so chances are, I mean, as chance would have it, another game that I like very much, and so I'm extremely happy to have basically a smaller, shorter version of Patchwork, in which instead of creating, well, a patchwork, you create this pyramid. And again, even creating the pyramid has its own interesting decisions. You're trying to score bonuses, you're trying not to cover mon symbols, but of course covering some at a lower level may be perfectly fine if you're building toward higher levels that will give you a lot more points. Let's see if I put the mon symbols there, and they may be covered later. If I put them on the side that I showed you, am I still able to match? And there's only one other player, so only one other pyramid, so that looking at their pyramid, see what they may want, taking into account what you don't want them to have, is very reasonable. It's part of the strategy, and it doesn't cause a lot of downtime. It's usually you, at least I mind about my own business, my own Tableau a lot more with multiple players, because it would take me too much time, and it's usually not worth it to spend so much time looking at those tableaus. But here the economy is tight, the game is tight and short, every card matters. So what I take and what I leave behind, the card that I take and the opportunity that I open, are both very, very important. But very simple, very smooth, very organic. So you have here the body of a filler in terms of how long it takes you to set up. I mean, you saw me set it up as we were talking. How long it takes to play, 10-15 minutes. It's a filler for sure, and you can teach it to anybody, really, as fillers should be in between other games or where somebody is late at game night. But it's a thinky filler. Thinky filler. It has enough to think there that it can be more entertained, more intrigued than I expected at first. In that aspect, then is when it's the closest to Anamikoji, which also was something similar like that. A simple game that that plays quickly, and yet has some nice, really interesting decisions. So if you like to think about strategy a little bit, but not in an obvious way, but you also don't want to set up a big game every time, Kimono Memories. The art is very nice, and gameplay, while light, is also very pleasant and enjoyable. Definitely, I like Kimono Memories as a thinky filler.